How you doing? This is Mr. Ingerson, and we're talking today about the commercial revolution, which happened around the year 1500, so circa 1500. We're really looking at different economic theories, and one of the earliest economic theories in modern history was really the idea of mercantilism. And, economic theories are all about how does a country get wealthy, and how do the people in that country become wealthy. And so the commercial revolution was really the beginning of that, and mercantilism played a big role. So you have a couple things that I want you to remember. By where it says commercial at the top of your sheet, write business. When we think of commercials, we think of ads that play before a YouTube video or advertisements that we get really annoyed with when we're watching live TV. But commercial really just means business in general. So, for example, you may hear that in Salem there is a commercial district, which means where there's lots of businesses, and that, of course, would be Main Street, specifically right in front of Spartan Drive. And then a revolution is simply a term that means change. Yes, a revolution can be bloody, but a revolution can happen in agriculture or farming. It can happen in science. It's just some sort of large change. So around 1500, there ends up being this really, really huge change in business and how things are done. And that's became known as, historically, the commercial revolution. On your notes page, it looks like this. And so up by commercial, you should have written business. And by revolution, you should have change. We're going to be looking over here at the why it happened, what it is, and then the theories of mercantilism and how that fit in. So go ahead and grab your note sheets and be ready. At any moment, please go ahead and pause, but listen carefully as we go through it. All right, first off, why? European maritime nations, and that means nations that were fronting the Atlantic Ocean. So we're talking about England, France, Spain, Portugal, the Netherlands. Those nations were competing for overseas, and there were really three reasons. One, markets. They want to be able to sell things. Markets are places where goods and services are sold. Go ahead and write this down. So they're competing for markets. They want to be able to sell their goods around the world, specifically in Asia. They want to be able to buy goods that they want, goods specifically from Asia and Africa, and they want to be able to make a whole lot of money by this trade process. So they're competing for different markets. India was a huge place where they wanted to go. Second reason for nations competing for overseas, maritime nations competing. Oh, by the way, here's a trade route. And you see these were the existing trade routes, and then Europeans are going to try to start sailing to these locations, like in Africa or Asia, in order to compete against the Ottoman Empire. And this is going to kind of set off a competition between the European nations that are right here. Here's Portugal, Spain, France, and England. And they're going to start competing against one another to try to get to Asia. Second, colonies. European nations competed overseas for colonies. They set up a settlement. Go ahead and jot that down. That's ruled by a parent country. That's what a colony is. And they set these up for various reasons. Some so that way they had a place there that they could always control to trade with the local people around them. Also to exert control over natural resources there. As a matter of fact, probably the greatest empire ever to exist is the British Empire. You see a map here that was actually made around the year 1900, so it's about 100 years old. And you'll see all the countries in red. All the countries in red were controlled by the British Empire, or what we would call England in 1500. And there was a saying that the sun never sets on the British Empire. And if you look at the map, because the British had areas all around the world, from way over on the right in Australia, New Zealand, and that area, to all the way into the west with Canada, I mean, literally there always is a place in the world where the British controlled. And other countries like France, and the Netherlands, and Portugal, and Spain, they also were trying to build empires at the same time. So getting colonies. So one, we got markets. Two, we have colonies. And three, something I already mentioned, resources. So they're trying to gain the resources from those areas so they can then produce more goods. Good, so that kind of completes the why. Here's why they're competing overseas. This is going to cause a business revolution. Now we're looking at the what. So what happens? What is this business revolution that happens due to this competition for markets, for colonies, for resources? Okay, a couple things. One, new money and banking systems develop. So go ahead and jot that down. So new money and banking systems developed. Prior to the commercial revolution, money was mostly coins, gold, silver, typically, and banking consisted of like rich people who borrowed money, if there was any at all. I mean, there was very little banking whatsoever. And now suddenly, because of these large overseas markets where you could buy and sell goods, people were like, I need credit and I need to be able to buy stuff. So they started to develop systems to make it easier to do business. Here's what they are, and they may look familiar to you. First off, one of them included money, and it was paper checks. A paper check. Like, rather than, carry around bags of gold to, say, purchase a ship that's going to sail to India and supply it with supplies, if you walk around with big bags of gold, someone's going to steal it. So instead, we started to develop this paper check system, which we still use today. You have your name and the address, and then you have a place where you write down the amount, and then the person takes it to the bank, and then they can actually get money from it. And so that was part of it. So paper checks became like a more efficient way and safe way of doing transactions rather than carrying around gold and silver that's going to get stolen. A second thing is just the idea of credit. Again, modern banking started with just really, really wealthy families borrowing money, like the Medici of Italy, of the Italian city-states, and then eventually developed into like actual banks. So the ability to get credit or a loan is really something that's a more modern part of history, and it's part of this business revolution. So instead of having only money that you have, you now can borrow money from these banks and be able to get your business off the ground. Okay, so we have the why. They're competing for resources, for colonies, for markets. And then the what is new banking and money systems, including checks and credit. And now we're looking at theories. First off, economic practices such as mercantilism evolved. Mercantilism is an economic theory that developed during this time period, and you'll notice that the root word mercantilism, merchant. It's kind of a funny word. I always like saying it funny, like mercantilism. This just sounds funny to say, mercantilism. And so mercantilism's root word is merchant, and a merchant sells things. So mercantilism has to do with this business idea and selling things. And it's kind of an odd theory that has very much now not thought of very positively. First, part of mercantilism was you needed to be a mother country. Mercantilism, mother country. Remember that. Mercantilism, mother country. So a mother country has colonies. So first thing you did as a mercantilism is the idea was you're going to be rich if you go out and get colonies. Go out, conquer some place, get a bunch of colonies. And these colonies exist to serve the mother country. They provide her with things. And so that was the first part of mercantilism. Why is this not considered positive today? Well, one, the idea of going out and conquering other people, not considered very positive. Two, it costs a lot of money to go conquer and then rule other people who don't want to be ruled by you. So it's very questionable whether or not this even like you actually made money by conquering others. You probably lost money because ruling them is expensive. So this makes the mercantilism kind of stupid to begin with. It's much easier to trade with a country than it is to go take it over. All right, so colonies exist to preserve or serve the mother country. Two, countries take over the colonies to get resources. You don't have gold, you go conquer someone and take it. You need cotton, you conquer India and then force the Indians to grow cotton for you. So whatever the need is, you go make your colony give it. You want bananas, you go conquer some country in Central America and force them to grow bananas and take their bananas. That's the idea. Again, this costs a lot of money, and it would have been far cheaper to trade with them. But mercantilism says, become a mother country, get colonies, force them to give you their resources. And then the goal overall in mercantilism is to become self-sufficient. Self-sufficient means that you don't have to rely on others. I rely on myself, not others. So if I need resources like lumber, then I go get a colony, and the colony gives me lumber rather than me having to trade with another country. That's what it would mean to be self-sufficient. You don't have to trade with another country. You export goods. You send goods out. You don't have to import. Export, not import. Export, not import. That's what it means to be self-sufficient as a country. By the way, America, not self-sufficient whatsoever. And that's okay because we trade things to countries that don't have what we have, high technology, insurance, monetary products like on Wall Street, trading goods, stuff like that. And then we get back from them goods that maybe we need. So export, not import. And so that, in the end, kind of goes through why we have the business revolution, the commercial revolution, what it was, and then theories like mercantilism that were around it. Okay, so finish up your notes and then go onto the computer and do your practice. Thanks.